Here now is Solutionaries.
Welcome back to Solutionaries. On this show, we've covered issues like drug addiction, food deserts, phishing scams, and unaffordable housing, all problems that require more than one solution. Gun violence is no exception. It is happening in communities across America, from big cities to small towns. Shootings make headlines every day. Some stem from domestic violence or encounters with law enforcement. And while mass shootings and murders get more public attention, suicides account for over half of gun deaths in the U.S. Pew Research compiled data from the CDC, FBI, and other sources and found the number of gun fatalities has increased over the years, with 2021 recording the most of any year on record. So what can we do to keep guns out of the hands of people who want to harm themselves or others? The Solutionaries team in Virginia takes a look at technology being used to save lives and solve crimes.
I thought I was Father of the Year, but my son turned out to be a better father than me. And he was killed one day after his baby turned 6 months.
Today I want to announce a new component of our violent crime strategy.
NIBIN.
Is this going to save lives?
It will, definitely, yes.
Solving violent crime, especially gun violence, can be difficult. And when no one wants to talk to investigators, it can be even harder. But NIBIN is helping. It's technology that's used all over the country and right here in Danville. The evidence shows it's working. It's helping investigators find the people responsible and bring justice to victims.
Danville's your typical city. We have young children, I'm talking about age, 5th, 6th grade, walking around with guns. And they don't find them in their homes. They go on the street. Some older person gives it to them or sells it to them. My name is Curtis Gore. My son was killed through gun violence. And now that I'm retired, it is my mission to try to help other kids to keep them from either killing someone or being killed.
Talk to me about Brandon with his kids.
I thought I was Father of the Year, but my son turned out to be a better father than me. He has 2 girls, Liza, who's now 6, starting 1st grade, and he was killed one day after his baby turned 6 months. And she's now 18 months and saying her ABC, and she is him. Saying her alphabet, saying her numbers. And I put her to bed the other night, and I looked at her, and I saw my son.
National Integrated Ballistics Identification Network, or what we refer to frequently as NIBIN.
NIBIN gives you a start point. Say you have a shooting incident over the weekend and you've got nothing. It occurred at 3 in the morning, no video, nobody's talking to you. Maybe you don't even have anybody struck but a car or a house that's shot up, but you have casings. Then you have another incident a few days later with a house or a car or maybe even person shot up. You can connect those incidents through NIBIN and through ballistics imaging. So you know, okay, we have one person or 2 people that are out here shooting up areas of our community. All right, and hopefully NIBIN will link not only those incidents, will link you back to that person. So that gives you a big leg up in the investigation.
These casings are from a firearm that was recovered that we actually test fired here. And this is our CSU processing office. This is where we can process shell casing. I'm Corporal Stephen Kennedy, Danville Police Department, working our crime scene unit. It's a 9-day difference. I mean, the investigative leads that you're able to use. We just had an incident the other day. It linked to 4 other incidents. So there's no actionable intelligence in a case. You just have casings that are recovered from the scene. There's no witnesses, no victims. Somebody was shooting a firearm. Those casings may relate to an incident where there is actionable intelligence. So now you have leads in a case where you had nothing before.
Is this going to save lives?
It will, definitely, yes.
Because you're able to take action quickly?
Correct. We're able to take action quickly and get violent criminals off the street faster with intelligence we may not have had. I'd say we're cutting edge for the region for sure. We're just able to get results much quicker than just relying on other agencies or outside sources to get our information back to us. We can do it ourselves in-house. A lot of times have results within hours as opposed to months, and use that to help solve a case.
One way it helps in reference to first knowing how many guns and or individuals may be involved. You may have 27 different 9mm casings, but once you use NIBIN, that helps in reference to telling you, well, it's 3 different guns were used in this shooting. It also helps the investigators narrow down suspects. Also, it brings some level to witnesses in reference to, maybe a little more comfort in actually cooperating with the police and telling them what they know, that it's not just on their eyewitness testimony, it's also some science behind the prosecution.
Danville has had about 400 hits in the NIBIN system since they started using it in 2018, and it's leading to investigators being able to solve crimes faster.
You're holding people accountable who have committed violent crimes or used those firearms to commit violent crimes. You can prevent the violent crimes from occurring in the first place. Today I want to announce a new component of our violent crime strategy. So NIBIN is such an important tool because it is an opportunity for state, local, and federal law enforcement to try to be able to solve a violent crime that occurred in an individual community. And if it's not being used, then there's a valuable lead or valuable evidence that's being left on the table.
There are 280 agencies around the country using NIBIN who have the systems, and that number is growing. The purpose of this is to assist state and local with their unsolved shootings. And so this van can travel to high crime areas.
You take this mobile van into high crime areas, and what have you found?
We have found that a small number of shooters are doing a relatively high number of shootings. And that's huge when it comes to an investigative lead, because shootings will happen today, one happened yesterday, and one happened the day before, and we have 3 different investigators investigating each of those crimes. With NIBIN, we can show that those 3 shootings are linked.
So potentially the same gun being used in multiple shootings.
Correct, yes.
In a very specific area.
Yes.
And that's what you're seeing?
And that's what we're seeing. We are also seeing up the 95 corridor from Florida to New York, firearms being used in crimes along the way. So with the NIBIN van, we can search a certain region or we can search the whole country.
Talk to me about the limitations of NIBIN, because it can't be perfect.
It's not perfect. I think any technology is imperfect. Sometimes you might not have a good hit. Sometimes you're not able to gather those casings that can be used for submission. And at the end of the day, nothing beats community cooperation. Nothing beats a community that trusts their police department enough that they will come forward and provide valuable information early on in an investigation so we can bring that offender to justice.
It's not the end all. It won't solve a case by itself. It's a tool, it's a piece of the puzzle, but it's a very important piece of the puzzle that can really bring a case to its conclusion.
NIBIN is as good as its input. There's millions of pieces of evidence that are a part of the database. But if it's not being used in the communities, if it's not being used in the Western District of Virginia, then law enforcement agencies are not able to draw lines and make connections between violent crimes that are occurring in an individual community or across communities. That's one of the things that we've heard from some of our local law enforcement agencies, that they don't believe that they have access. That's a solvable problem. It's being solved, and we're seeing more and more access here in the Western District of Virginia every day. But importantly, it also takes time and effort to locate shell casings when there's a shooting and to collect that evidence. But we feel like that is such a small additional expenditure and things that should be occurring anyway in the investigation of violent crimes, that all we're talking about really is just submitting the shell casings to the ballistics identification network. And we absolutely think that it's worth that time and staff.
I'm very passionate about reducing violence. I've been doing this for almost 30 years now in a couple different places. And to me, for law enforcement not to put all hands on deck approach to reducing gun violence, then we're really not doing our job. We should be doing everything we can to save lives in our community. And part of that is quickly identifying those suspects that have caused harm and finding justice for those families and limiting that retaliation. I think we have to do that. That's our job.
I think anything they can do to get guns off the street, anything they can do to a case, let's say in New Jersey that comes to Danville, if it's the same gun with the NIBIN system, they can now make sure these two are together. What was this gun in the meantime? And they can start tracking down people that have committed crimes.
Still ahead on Solutionaries, how one person can make a positive difference, building trust and mentoring troubled teens.
What was life like for you when you were in a gang?
Simple. I just had to break bones. That's it. I was the enforcer. If you didn't pay the bill, they sent me. My name was Big Buck because I didn't give up. And I was equipped for the job. I started when I was 12. If we can get to them before they get to that next level, we can get them on a totally different course.
Stopping the cycle of gun violence in Jacksonville, next. Welcome back to Solutionaries. I'm your host, Lewis Bolden. Up until 2020, car accidents were the leading cause of death among children and teens in America. Now, gun violence is taking more young lives than ever before. Federal data from the CDC shows the number of gun deaths among American children and teenagers rose 50% between 2019 and 2021. While painful stories of school shootings continue to make more headlines every year, these attacks only account for a small percentage of juvenile gun deaths. More often, we see tragic cases of kids caught in crossfire and teens gunned down over drugs or drama on social media. A 2023 study by the University of Michigan found teens who are exposed to violence are more likely to carry a firearm. So how do we break the cycle? In Jacksonville, a pastor with a violent past is now dedicating his life to helping troubled kids choose a different path.
It's October 2020, and a gun goes off at a high school campus in Jacksonville.
An 18-year-old student brought the gun to school. They say that he was showing the gun off when it accidentally discharged.
A fellow 18-year-old has been shot. Thankfully, he's okay.
I'm very disappointed. I can even say that I'm angry.
This is another example of campus violence, but you may be surprised to hear the student who brought the gun to school isn't in prison. Instead, he's in a program to get him on the right track.
As they say, we think we can help this one.
They say, hey, you need to speak up. If you don't need help, I'm not gonna help you, you know? And that made me step up and speak up.
We asked you what you think would lower violence in your community. Carmen said, signs all over the neighborhood advising who to contact if you want to get out of a gang or life of crime. Linda wrote, get the parents involved. They should always know who the children are hanging with and what they are doing. And Barry said, we have a generation of men who did not grow up with their fathers. The culture, regardless of race, of broken homes needs to change.
We found something that seems to incorporate all this. Is it a better solution for troubled teens? Is it a way to keep them out of jail and to stop them from reoffending? We are taking a look in this episode of Solutionaries, where we look for solutions in every story we cover. We show proof that these solutions actually work, and we shed light on the limitations, because we know that if there was a perfect solution out there, this wouldn't be a problem in the first place.
We met Chris outside the Duval County Jail. It's a dark reminder of where he was headed just a few years earlier.
What are you doing? How's life?
It's going good. I'm just working, you know, getting my life back, right?
He's shy but polite, and while we're not showing his face for his protection, he's cheerful. A far cry from the Chris we would have met in 2020.
I was like depressed. I was sad, you know, just wish I could never done that, you know.
So you went to school, you had a weapon?
Yes, sir.
What was that for?
It was for my protection.
He tells us he was on the football team, not in a gang, and had no intention of hurting anyone. But he was living a high-risk life. That single gunshot, which he maintains was an accident, started changing his life. Not for the worse, like many of us would suspect, but for the better.
So you almost lost everything you worked for.
I almost lost.
You could have spent some time
jail.
Right there in jail.
Yes, sir.
How did your life turn around?
My life turned around when I didn't just want to do years in prison or nothing, you know. And then I met Garland Scott.
Give us success in taking those off of the street.
Pastor Garland Scott. He was reluctant to even do this interview and show his face because He's been working in the shadows of this community for decades, building trust with those who don't trust anyone.
I interrupt violence. I find an alternative for a violent lifestyle.
A man of God who used to be a man of crime in Brooklyn's toughest streets.
What was life like for you when you were in a gang?
Simple. I just had to break bones. That's it. I was the enforcer. If you didn't pay the bill, they sent me. My name was Big Buck because I didn't give her. And I was equipped for the job. I started when I was 12. And I did it till I was 27.
He escaped that life by escaping for his life. He moved to Florida in the 90s after someone tried to kill him. He found faith along the way, a lesson he passes on to the young men who are on the wrong path.
What do you tell them?
I'm here to keep you safe, alive, and out of prison. I'm not interested in the case. I'm only here to keep you safe.
He wants to make it very clear he is not a police officer, but he does work side by side with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, specifically the violent crime and gang units. Jacksonville has a high violent crime rate, with more than 30 documented gangs, 570 plus gang members, and more than 100 murders every year.
Mr. Franklin, you're not in any trouble.
It's an approach called the Hope and the Hammer. The hope is for a better life, a lucrative career. That's the pastor's job. The hammer comes from the police officers flanking him. Keep causing trouble, and you'll end up behind bars. Or dead.
They got pictures of you out there with your gun out there. I know it's legal, but that don't look right. You know what I mean? They can pick up anything on there. Is that making sense to you?
He leaves the men and their parents with food for thought and a letter like this one. Call me and I'll help.
There are a lot of people who will say, these are gang members, they're a lost cause, they need to be locked up, put away forever.
They don't understand value. Value is contingent upon rarity. Rocks are not valuable because they're everywhere. Diamonds are valuable because they have a special cut to them. If we can get to them before they get to that next level, we can get them on a totally different course.
What do you have to offer with that totally different course?
I can say it boldly, pretty much everything. We have 130-something outreach supporters, from juvenile justice to DCF to Job Corps.
Numbers show in many cases it's working. In the past 6 years, Garland Scott and his team have contacted 919 young people. He says about 2 in 5 of those call back asking for help.
We got a good record. We got about a 40% success rate where they're productive citizens. They're not shooting and they're not getting shot. We're out there and we don't celebrate it. We just keep plowing along. You're only as great as your last success.
As for Chris, with Pastor Scott's help, prosecutors have diverted the charges for community service.
I'm proud of you. I want you to know that,
man.
He's gotten a job. He's in the gym training to hopefully play college football. And he doesn't miss an invitation for a meal with his mentor.
What was it that made you believe in him and not say, he's a lost cause, I can't help here?
He had tattoos, and I told him to get rid of them. 2 days they were gone. He covered them up. He had a wild hairstyle. I'm not into hairstyles, but it had represented something then. He cut that hair off the same day.
Is life better on the good side as compared to a life of crime?
Life way better. Life way better.
Solutionaries needs you to be part of the conversation. Check out our YouTube page and leave a comment to help us tackle new topics and find solutions. If you missed any part of this episode, you can watch the entire show anytime on News 6+. And while you're there, explore more stories of people working to find solutions, like this episode about psychedelic drug therapy.
MDMA is administered 3 times in a very specific environment with a very well-trained staff at hand. And those dosing sessions each take about 8 hours. And then in follow-up, we assess how much PTSD symptomology a participant still has.
Or this one about the debate over removing books from library shelves.
One group sees removing some books from libraries as a solution to protecting their children.
I can't stand this filth.
Another group sees removing these books as the problem, though, and they're looking at libraries to be the solution.
You can stream it all for free on News 6 Plus. I'm Louis Bolden. Thanks for watching.